Barely Research Facts is a fact-based podcast brought to you by Art Now Thus, an experiential arts agency based out of Mumbai. Each episode, we pick a word at random, dive into it, and see what it brings to us. We are your hosts. My name is Ragini, and this is Shar. Let's go.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Barely Research Facts.
Hi.
Hi, Ragini.
Okay.
So, today's episode, we're doing something interesting at the beginning of the episode. The word for the episode is mask, and let's jump into it.
Okay.
So, Ragini,
Yeah.
do you want to play a game?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'm going to rattle off colors, and all I want you to do is pick one primary color, as in not a primary in the usual sense of the one
main
color and two supporting colors.
Okay.
Okay, here are the colors.
You know, honestly, every time that we have played this game, I did not know you meant one main color. I have been choosing red, green, or blue because I am choosing a primary color each time.
Good. Okay, so here are your options. Red, gold, silver, green, white, pink, blue, black, purple, orange.
Black, white, and gold. Black is my primary. White and gold are my supporting.
Okay, I've noted those down, and they'll come back later in the episode, and it'll have something to do with masks.
Ah, how exciting.
I know, it's super exciting. Okay, so masks.
Woo!
I had a lot of fun. From the hooting in the audience, as you can tell, it was an extremely fun topic to research. Most of them are, to be fair. Masks usually, what do they represent? They usually represent supernatural beings, ancestors, or imagined figures, fictional characters, and they could be portraits, sometimes even of yourself. But the essential characteristic of hiding or revealing personalities is common to most masks. As cultural objects, they've been used throughout the world in all periods since literally the Stone Age, and they've been varied in their appearance and the material they use to be crafted as well. So, do you want to talk about the plague, Ragini?
Oh, okay, wow, that was quite a turn. I was quite getting like, yes, I do. Of course, I want to talk about the plague.
Okay, good.
I'm quite fascinated, actually.
Oh, good. A third of the European population was like, poof, gone, vanished. But yes, it was extremely interesting. It was once the most feared disease in the world. And this is in the 17th century that it started out, but it did continue on for a couple of centuries. It wiped out literally hundreds of millions of people. And it had, quite vicious symptoms as well.
Yeah.
Painfully swollen lymph nodes, blackened skin, and other gruesome symptoms, as though those two weren't gruesome enough.
That's why it's called the Black Death, isn't it?
Yeah. The Black Plague, Black Death, bubonic plague, those are just basically all the names that you could call it. So, in 17th century Europe, the physicians who tended to plague victims, they wore a costume, of all the places to wear one. But I think it's something... Yes. I think it's something that a lot of people will be familiar with. It's the plague doctor mask, the one with the big protruding beak.
The beak, yeah.
So,
it's quite creepy. Like, I know it had a purpose at the time, but it's quite a...
Yeah, it's quite a silhouette it creates.
Yeah.
So the reason behind it was a misconception about the nature of dangerous diseases in the first place. So currently, we have what is called the germ theory of disease in the scientific community that's accepted. What it basically states is that microorganisms known as pathogens or germs can lead to disease. Pretty simple, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
But it took quite a while for us to get there.
Okay.
Before the germ theory of disease was prevalent, there was another theory called the Miasma Theory, which is now an obsolete medical theory. Basically, what it did was held that diseases such as contagious diseases like cholera, chlamydia, Black Death, were caused by a miasma. And a miasma is basically an ancient Greek word for pollution. So it just meant noxious air or bad air. And it's sometimes also called night air. So what that theory held is that epidemics were caused by miasma, and usually this miasma or bad air emanated from rotting organic matter. So now you can imagine why people thought maybe a costume or something like physical between them and the rotting organic matter, which would...
That completely covers you, yeah.
Yeah. So coming back to the costume...
I mean, to be fair, they did get it right. Not the theory, but just the idea of...
Yeah, a barrier.
Just the idea of like, you want to stay away from something that's gross. Yeah. I could get behind that kind of theory.
Yeah, because it's human instinct, isn't it? To be disgusted by something that is rotting or, I don't know, like a bodily secretion that is to recoil, especially, yes, because of the smell, but also I think it's just evolutionary to just be like, ew. So the costume is usually credited to this physician called Charles Delorme. He was quite well-known and prominent, especially during the era of the Black Plague. He catered to the medical needs of many European royals. So people like King Louis XIII were tended to by him. So he's the one who came up with this fanciful outfit. He created this outfit that was a coat covered in scented wax, breeches connected to boots, a tucked-in shirt, and a hat and gloves made of goat leather.
Wow.
All this sounds not so bad. It sounds like, just a costume that someone would wear from that era. But
like an elaborate
he also
costume.
Added... Yeah, an elaborate one. He also added a rod that allowed the doctors, the plague doctors, to poke at victims or fend them off, because they also believed in distance, obviously. So to keep them away from you, like 1 arm distance, please, like in school.
Yeah, that's one way to ensure social distancing. Just have like everybody walk around with a stick and like, poke, poke.
Yeah, get away from me.
I'm going to do that now.
Okay, you let me know how it goes. Okay?
Yeah, I will.
And after you've been beat up, just make sure you take yourself to the hospital. Or maybe not, actually, these days. So now, coming to the meaty part of the outfit, which is the headgear, which included the mask.
Yeah.
They had spectacles on. They had a mask with a nose 1/2 foot long, shaped like a beak, filled with perfume, with only 2 holes, one on each side near the nostrils. So similar to a bird's beak, basically. Now, what was interesting about the mask is that they filled the end of the mask with theriac, which was like a compound of 55 herbs, more than 55 herbs. And they included things like cinnamon, myrrh, honey, and viper flesh powder.
I'm sorry, what?
Viper flesh powder, for the audience in the back.
Like the snake. Like a snake viper. Oh, okay. I see how that goes in this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Things that you could have
cinnamon, myrrh, viper flesh. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have it in a soap, in a fancy soap, cinnamon, myrrh, and honey, and viper flesh powder. And obviously it contained other things as well. I don't know. I don't want to imagine what, but it did. So this physician, Delorme, he thought that the beak shape of the mask would give the air sufficient time to be suffused by the protective herbs before it hit plague doctor's nostrils and lungs.
Can I fathom a guess and say it didn't?
He was wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Probably didn't work.
And though plague doctors across Europe wore these outfits, the look was so iconic in Italy. It became iconic in Italy as the plague doctor. And, further on in the episode, we'll talk a little bit about masks as well. It became a staple of Italian commedia dell'arte. And
oh, yeah, I know this actually. Yeah.
Later, with the carnival as well. So that's where the plague doctor mask comes from.
Wow. And so basically, I'm assuming the use of the plague doctor outfit ended with the discovery of germ theory.
It didn't last too long, thankfully. I don't want to say with certainty, because this is barely research finds. But not more than half a century or to a century. It didn't last very long. It's like bell-bottom jeans. I don't know. It didn't last very long.
Oh, wow. Great analogy there. Okay. So basically, but what did happen with the advent of germ theory is that as people discovered how diseases spread, and doctors became aware of the fact that they could be carriers of disease, the modern day medical outfit that you see started coming more and more into use, and that included medical masks. By 1890, doctors had become more aware. There was a broader use of mask wearing, but there was still dispute around it. However, in 1910, the Manchurian plague in China which, by the way, had a mortality rate of close to 100% and killed tens of thousands of people in China.
God.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good about COVID at this point.
I know. That's exactly what I thought when I read this.
Jeez.
But basically, there was a Chinese doctor called Wu Lian-ten who identified the virus as being spread from human to human through the air, and therefore it was a pneumonic plague and not a bubonic plague. And just because of how devastating the plague was in China, it got so much press that slowly you had these images of doctors and nurses wearing surgical outfits and gloves and masks that started to be spread in worldwide media. And people began to take to it more. And this was actually the turning point. However, even then, Europe didn't take to it immediately. There was, during the Spanish flu, doctors were still quite divided in their opinion about whether masks were efficient or not. However, at the time, Japan and West Coast America had begun to provide for masks for medical professionals. In the winter of 1918 and 1919, California Department of Health made it mandatory to wear masks in public, which led to mass-scale protests in the country as people considered it a gross violation of individual freedom.
I don't believe that. That could never happen.
No, it's just impossible. Just like I was shocked. I mean, really, how? Anyway, in 1933, the flu was identified as a virus. Pharmaceutical companies began to scale up the production of antibiotics, and slowly the flu all but disappeared, and so did the use of masks. There's also like a cool segment about just how disposable masks came into being, and it's just about, like the general idea is that while originally masks were this metal rim and they had these layers of like multiple layers of gauze that sort of prevented respiratory droplets from, but like they were comfortable, just like, what we have
as
is
long
elastic.
As they were comfortable. Okay.
It's just that they had like metal rims instead of the elastic that we have. But it was a pain because it meant sterilizing it after every use and cleaning it and replacing the cotton. And slowly hospitals really moved into this total disposable system with everything, including like the PPE suits and the gloves and the masks and the syringes. And honestly, there are studies, however, that say that the more we got into disposable use for hospital equipment, the more reusable equipment stopped even featuring in studies that just measured efficacy. And after 1975, reusable masks haven't been included in any studies to really... So conclusively, we can't really say if current day industrially produced reusable masks, not the ones that we make at home, but industrially produced reusable masks are actually more or less efficient than disposable masks that have just become much more commonplace. So it could just be a thing of us finding things convenient and wanting to take the easy way out.
That is interesting. I mean, I'm sure they've been included in studies now, but not enough lead time for them to be actually... I don't know.
The last study was in 1975, where the author concluded that the reusable mask made of 4-ply cotton muslin was superior to the popular disposable paper mask and the new synthetic respirators. He noted that incorporated in a good mask design, the cotton fabrics may be just as effective. But in the absence of commercial cotton masks, more recent studies have only compared artisanal or homemade masks, and those have obviously fallen short. So, you never know.
That's interesting because I'm sure there's so many nano fabrics and things that have been developed since then. So I'm sure people are in the process of doing it right now. If there was like a large-scale mass study about masks now, the results would read so differently.
Yeah. Or maybe we'll spark that study. People say, what?
Yeah. Thanks to these two intrepid young girls.
Who know everything.
Sorry, I think I was transported back in time 15 years to say we were young girls.
Well, yeah, so that's the story of... sorry, I have one more thing that I have to say very quickly before we can move on to our next segment. But this is a very cool fact. It's cool because we have our first guest contributor.
What?
Woo! Yeah, we do. So my friend Hina, who's also an avid listener of this podcast, I'm just going to say that.
Hi, Hina.
But yeah, so Hina sent in this particular fact, which I quite like, but it talks about the culture of mask wearing in Japan. And so masks have been quite commonplace in Japan even before all of last year and before COVID-19. And they have had a severe shortage of disposable masks along with everything else, like the rest of the world. And people in Japan have begun to start wearing masks made at home or just like, reusable masks. in Japan, you don't see people wearing colorful masks. You still see a big part of the population wearing white or black masks because individualization is just so discouraged as a community that most people just like to comply and conform to what everybody else is doing, and they don't really feel the need to stand out.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah. And so there are pictures, and we'll attach it to the blog here, but like there's a picture of people on commute, and you can see everyone is just wearing white masks, even though the rest of the world has picked up. And so there are some politicians now in Japan who apparently they'll wear colorful masks, or they'll wear they'll support their local soccer team or the home region that they come from. And that's picking up a bit. So because of the civil rights abuse during World War II, Japan has very strict laws now protecting civil rights for citizens. And so the government cannot mandate mask wearing, they cannot mandate a lockdown. So what the government does is they rely on societal pressure, which is still very strong in Japan. And therefore, the sense of community, the need to conform, leads to people wearing masks outside because nobody wants to be the one standing out. But the other side of it is that in Japan, you largely just see people wearing black or white masks. And there's nothing really personalizing those masks.
It's very interesting. I can't say I'm surprised, but it's so interesting because...
Yeah, just how mask wearing has the cultural impact of how it plays out.
Yeah. Coming from India where people want to be different, there's this the brighter colored your house is, the better in some cases. It's weird and wonderful to see people who are so cohesive in their decision making for various things, not only just colors, but also life decisions. Really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Okay, so with that now, I'm done with my last bit of the fact that I wanted to jump in with.
So, I did say that we'd come back to the Plague Doctor mask later on, and guess what? That segment's here. So, we couldn't let an episode go by without obviously doing a tiny bit of research into Venetian masks, because they're just, the first thing you think of when you think of masks, especially in theatre or art or drama or performance related, I think of Venetian masks. So I'm just going to quickly rattle through a couple of masks that caught my attention and the reason behind why they are shaped the way they are. Starting with the Columbina, also known as the Columbine or the Columbino. I love Italian. I speak it fluently if you can't tell.
Yes, we can tell.
So, the Columbina is a half mask and usually worn by women. It's decorated, obviously, in usual Venetian mask fashion with gold, silver, crystals, and feathers, etc. This is one of those that's held up with a stick to the face. I'm saying stick, but there's a more eloquent word saying baton. It's held up with a baton or tied with ribbon. The Columbine was popularized by an early actress in the Commedia dell'arte of the same name. Her name was Columbina, basically. And it's said that it was designed for this actress because she didn't wish to have her beautiful face covered completely. So it's one of those that just is a half mask. And it can be held up to the face, so you can take it away and show the world your beauty.
And then hide when you need to.
Definitely not one of the ones I'd be wearing. I'd be in one of the next ones that I'm going to describe.
Okay.
Now, there's another mask called the Medico della Peste, which I'm assuming you can deduce as the...
I can't deduce it as anything, actually. Clearly, my Italian is worse than yours.
Medico?
Medical?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Plague Doctor mask.
Okay. Oh, well done. I'm very impressed with how you got that wrong.
I know. I'm surprised you didn't get it despite my amazing pronunciation. It's just, the Medico della Peste, with its long beak, is one of the most bizarre and recognizable of the Venetian masks. Again, popularized by the Commedia dell'arte art movement, the theatre movement. It was, as you'd imagine, like a smaller version of the bird mask, and they're obviously more decorative because the physicians had more important things to worry about than bejeweling their masks. And then the last one I'm going to describe is a very simplistic mask. You probably have seen this. It's called the bauta, and it covers most of the face, but it has a squarish jawline and often pointed and tilted upwards so that the wearer could talk, eat, and drink easily. As I said earlier, this is the mask that I would probably wear.
Yeah, all the important things.
Yeah.
I think I'm with you on this. Same mask.
So now the first thing I thought of was Venetian masks. The second thing that I thought of when we said that we research masks was my mother, bless her soul. I shouldn't say that. Is that a thing you say for dead people?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna stop there because my mom will be like, "What?" So my extremely vibrant, alive mother, she has this habit of, well, not habit actually, she's a collector of masks. And for the last, I'd say about 10 years, we've had the living room wall. One entire wall is taken up by all the masks that she's collected over her travels. And I think it started with something small, like, something that was like, oh, this might look nice on a wall. Cut to 10 years later, my dad's like, we don't have place for this. What are we going to do with all these 12 million masks? They're all on the wall. And they're from various different places. And I thought maybe she'd be the best person to describe a couple of them. So we're going to put in a snippet of her talking about some of her masks right here.
All the masks are dear to me, but the ones really special to me are the ones from Venice, bought on the waterfront of the Grand Canal from a loud and happy vendor. The pantomime ones, that is, of the jester, and the dramatic one with the black feathers as part of the headgear, and the intriguing half mask bringing out the whole world of make-believe and pantomime.
Okay, so that was my mom is adorable. I mean, I know everybody thinks their mom is adorable, but she is. And she does, literally, she loves each and every one. She knows exactly what they represent. And for the most part, they are really very interesting in each in their own little way. So if you want to listen to the entire clip of my mom talking about her masks and overlaid with a couple of pictures as well, you can go to the YouTube link in the episode notes.
Cool. Okay, so we know, I don't know how many people know this who are listening to us, but I have a background in performing arts, and I have studied theatre, and I have a background in theatre. And so obviously when we talked about masks, my first point of research was masks in performing arts. We started the episode saying this, right? But there is this air of mystery, there is this idea of like sort of uncovering something, there is... masks in itself are quite dramatic. And so it's quite obvious they started getting used in theatrical performances very, very early on. And now the oldest use of the mask as a device for theatre first emerged with what was the origins of Western theatre. And it was almost religious. It was religious in its use because... So when the communicant was attempting to impersonate the deity, they would don a goat skin or they would don something over their face, and then they would speak as the deity. And so they could speak in first person because they became the god that they were impersonating.
Yeah.
And this was the initial birth of the art of drama. I thought it was very cool.
How cool is that?
Yeah. And then it's like there is a growth of like just how, it went from like being ritual drama to being just drama. Masks continued to be used. They became like really elaborate in Greece. They had these really elaborate headdresses, and there are stories about how, masks were built in such a way that they would sort of like, they would throw the voice by means of some built-in device.
Oh,
but
cool.
Honestly, there is very little. Yeah, but there's not so much evidence about this. So it could just be slightly fantastical. But it's cool. I think it's cool that they had these really great masks that were used in their theatre. And one of the main purposes that masks also serve was, you didn't have to have 20 characters playing 20 actors playing 20 different characters. You could have 5 actors and they could just change their mask and they could play different characters. So that was one of the things that mask wearing did. And then in the Middle Ages, masks were basically used for dramatizing portions of the Bible. And so they were like extremely grotesque, and they were quite like, they had devils and demons, dragons, and they were built to personify the 7 deadly sins. And while again, cool, right? And while like, again, very little pictorial records of these, but generally it is agreed upon that the modern day masks that you see at carnivals and at the Mardi Gras and all of that with the folk demons and stuff are sort of descendants of these early age masks from the Middle Ages. And then, since we've talked about commedia dell'arte so much, in the 15th century, so just to tell you what commedia dell'arte is, it is a form of theatre from Rome and Italy, that's clear. But basically comedies that improvise from scenarios based upon domestic dramas of the ancient Roman comic playwrights and upon situations drawn from anonymous ancient Roman minds. And that began to flourish under this title of commedia dell'arte. It is still a very popular form of theatre training. Actually, lots of people go and study mask work and study like mime.
Really?
Yeah, like I know people who have actually. And it's quite cool. The work is amazing because it's so physical. Because, I mean, effectively, you know, your face is covered and then it's about just what your body can do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch. Like, physical theatre with mask is just, it's quite something. I highly recommend it. So, adopting Roman stock figures and situations to their own usages, the actors are usually masked. The masking, again, is usually grotesque and fanciful. There could be full face masks or there could be half face masks. I mean, there are excellent records for this. So we just kind of know exactly the kind of masks that were used. People continue to wear them. And especially, we also know that, you know, the Masquerade mask, the half-face black mask, that's quite popular. That came definitely from, it's certainly a development of the commedia dell'arte mask. And so that's mask wearing in theatre in the Western world, but there's also like a lot of use of masks in the Eastern world, particularly in Southeast Asian countries and in India. And so in Japan, you have no drama, and not like no drama, like N-O-H, the word is no.
Okay.
No drama. It's a firm, and they use masks. In Tibet and parts of India, which is like Sikkim and Bhutan as well, they have this dance, the Red Tiger Devil, that is performed. Again, it's a ritual dance. Actors wear paper mache masks. Sometimes they wear masks made of wood. And then you also have, in some places in Southeast Asia, they don't wear masks, but they do up their face with so much makeup that it almost gives the face the look of a mask. And so there's the kabuki tradition of theatre in Japan that does this. But this is my favorite, actually. So in India, we know we have Kathakali, and then you have a bunch of others. Like Kathakali is quite popular. It's a classical dance form where the actors are, they are masked and they wear, so actually more than mask, they wear, the makeup is very heavy and it almost transforms the face. But then you also have forms like, there's a form called Yakshagana, which is from Karnataka.
Yeah.
Again, it's a dance drama form and that's a mask form. And then you have a couple of forms from Tamil Nadu. There's Terakuthu, there's Natakuthu. There is also a really famous form of dance drama called Kudiattam that comes from Kerala. But I have seen a Kudiattam performance and it's amazing because first of all, they're like 8-9 hours. I'm not even kidding. It is so slow. But the amazing thing is that Kudiattam is actually all about the face and it's fascinating because it's mask, like you're wearing a mask and the entire action is just about what's going on in your face. And so one of the things that Indian classical dance is about is this concept called the Navarasa, which is the 9 emotions. And I won't run you through them, but they're 9 emotions. I will put the list down on the blog later for anybody who's interested. But one of the foremost performers and proponents of Kudiattam was this person called Amanur Madhava, who is particularly well known for actually bringing Kudiattam out of temple sanctuaries and bringing it to public performances. So he's quite instrumental. And he lived in the early 20th century when he passed away in 2008. And he was particularly known for his abhinaya work. And abhinaya is the use of emotions and expressions to bring out different emotions. And he did this, there's this particular piece that he used to do called Bali Vadhan, which is about the death of Bali.
Yeah.
To tell you who Bali is, in the Ramayana, the Vanar army, the monkey army that was sent to help Ram rescue Sita from Lanka, Sugriva was the king of the Vanar Sena and Bali was his elder brother. Okay. And Bali was basically granted a boon by Brahma because he sat in penance, and the boon was that anytime he would win a duel, he would gain half of his opponent's strength. So he basically became invincible.
Whoa.
All right.
Oh God, he was probably the Hulk by the end of it all.
Yeah.
To put a very modern, unnecessary twist on it.
But I was also thinking just how appropriate that was. It's like, wow, yeah. So And then Bali was killed by Ram eventually. But there is a Kudiattam piece called Bali Vadhan, and Amanur Madhava was well known for using. So in Kudiattam, they have this technique where they use the breath to connect it to the emotion that is being portrayed. And so you actually physically experience the emotion that you are portraying, and that is part of the training. And he was his use of this was quite renowned. And he was well known for using this technique for his improvisations of the death sequences of Bali. There was a show that he did where he basically played the role of Bali and showcased his death for 15 minutes on stage. So all the audience was watching was this Kudiattam performance with this master dying, and for 15 minutes you could just see the life ebbing out of this character.
Wow.
I think that's kind of amazing. And to actually have an audience that is gripped to watch this, because he was like, his breath was so connected to how he was portraying it that it actually felt that the body was losing life.
Youch. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's mask wearing and performing arts, and with particular focus on Kudiattam. Not so much about what they did with masks, but just what they do with their training.
And now, so coming to the interesting bit of the episode.
After all that, you just spent 40 minutes listening to us.
After 25 minutes of good content, here's the interesting bit, some made up stuff. I think it is made up, but I found these interesting descriptions of what certain masquerade mask colors signify. And so Ragini, as you remember, chose black as her primary color.
Yeah.
And two supporting colors were white and gold. So let's look at black first. A black mask. A black mask can symbolize traits including elegance, authority, dignity, sophistication, clearly something I don't have, mystery, and seduction. So,
Oh, I like this game.
yeah, it's very complimentary. I will say this. There's no like, and you also steal at the end of black. Hey, how about I add the bits that are negative? And you also have a tendency to steal. Okay, next.
Bit of a clip to there.
Yeah. White and gold. So let's go to white first. White shows that you are virtuous, fertile, clean, and of high status. Okay.
Virtual, fertile, clingy, and of high status.
You know what? Let's have clingy be the negative one. I did say clean, but we need to throw a negative one in there, so you're also clingy. You're fertile, virtuous, clean, of high status, and also sometimes clingy.
Okay.
And now let's go to the gold, which is the last one. Gold symbolizes illumination, wisdom, prestige, and class. I read class as sass the first time I read it, so I'm going to say also sassy sometimes.
Yes. I do have much wisdom, I have to agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, this reeks of being made up, but you can take from it what you like. I will put down the other colors in the blog, so you can do the game as well if you want to pick with us in the beginning of the episode. I hope you did. If you didn't, well, too bad. And that's all we have for this episode. We'll be back with another episode and another word and more facts. See you soon.
Yay, see you. That's it for now. If you like the podcast, if you would like to tell us your thoughts about the podcast, or if you'd like to suggest a word that we could explore, follow us on Instagram. We are at Barely Research Facts. Drop us a comment, drop us a DM. We would love to hear from you. You could also visit our website, www.artnowthus.in. We'll see you next time.